Welcome. In this breakout room, John Bergin, Director of Compliance Operations, Enterprise, and Cloud at Microsoft, will discuss why CMMC compliance matters to senior leadership. John works across sovereign deployments to ensure Microsoft delivers a secure and compliant solution. In this role, he's responsible for ensuring Microsoft's growing federal business meets or exceeds the security standards of Microsoft Corporation and federal defense requirements. John, thank you for being here today.
Hey, everybody. I'm John Bergin. I'm with Microsoft and really excited to get a chance to talk with you today about the most exciting topic, which is the government regulatory environment. It's very exciting because it is very problematic. The discussion today is focused on the cybersecurity maturity model that's been implemented by the U.S. Department of Defense. But what I'd like to talk to you all about is the model and the process in the context, right, of the Defense Department, our NATO allies and mission partners, state and local government, and then why that matters in terms of your leadership. Why do they care? So as we talk about CMMC, and I know there's some fantastic sessions going on today where you're going to get a deep dive into the regulation and the process. I think it's important to understand that in the U.S. regulatory environment, the DoD CMMC regulation, the intelligence community's kind of NIAP approach, and the U.S. civilian government's approach to FedRAMP, and the state and local government approach called StateRAMP, create a really interesting framework that's 4 pillars. As we look at these, none of them act really independently of each other. And as we move forward, you're seeing this very strongly now with Defense Department guidance that the DoD, even with CMMC, is looking to build off of FedRAMP. Why does this matter? Well, it creates really interesting problems for us where even in the US government, if something is DoD approved, is it also, right, DoD CMMC approved? Is it also approved in FedRAMP? The answer is no, absolutely not. If something is FedRAMP approved, is it also CMMC approved? No, absolutely not. And then you ask, like, well, John, you just said it's a web. And the answer is yes, but it's a really messy web where we're not building a clear flow through. And you have 4 major approval paths that you have to worry about and manage. As we look more broadly and we step back and we say, okay, so the US has 3 to 4 control regimes that impact my business, my organization. I then look out and I say, well, what about Canada? What about NATO mission partners? What about the United Kingdom? What about Australia? Like, how do we look, and again, US-centric mind, how do we look outward at our partner nations and deal with those mission partners and come and meet them where they are for government-sensitive work and classified work? Well, it gets really complicated because as we look at Canada, they've got a new initiative called CSC, which, oh my goodness, it's CMMC, but the Canadian flavor. Why is that important? Well, if you are a Canadian company with contracts direct with the US government, you have to maintain a CMMC compliant enclave. Potentially, if you're doing weapons transfer or ITAR data, you would have to maintain a sovereign US environment or tenant in which to work on the US government data. As you look at the Canadian rules for CSC, which are largely cut and paste from CMMC, and that's a fantastic thing to reuse principles, standards, and architectures, right? So you're not recreating the wheel to support every nation. That Canadian company would have to stand up a Canadian tenant to do work to support the Canadian Ministry of Defense. Now, if both the American government and the Canadian government operate the F-18 platform as an example, how does this Canadian manufacturer who makes parts for the Boeing F-18 operate safely, effectively, and efficiently, protect the data, provide the data back to its claimant nation in a reasonable fashion? So just as we look at the US government having a complicated, simplified map of 4 major control regimes, 3 that are visible to most people. As we start to weave in the realities of a multinational corporation, life gets very hard. The minute you add a European Union nation and you start to have to deal with GDPR, right? Super important privacy ruling, and quite frankly, the gold standard around the world, the rules change again, because now I have defense regulations and requirements which don't allow for personal privacy. And in fact, every time you log into a US or most NATO military systems, you get a pop-up that says, hey, we can look at everything you're doing. We can investigate everything you're doing. So this web gets complicated because all of a sudden GDPR says, no. The employee has rights. The employee has privileges. What do you do? How do you handle that? How do you manage sovereign data? And in this case, let's say for defense purposes, because that's what CMMC is focused on. And how do you pull that thread and respect GDPR while also respecting US data sovereignty requirements that are contractually landed in most cases? What do you do? How do you handle that conflict? How do you handle that system of systems interacting? And how do you bring order to the chaos? I think the simple answer is none of us in this room are going to do that alone, and we're going to have to advocate for reasonable policy decisions. But I take the step back and I lay out this overlapping set of spider webs that really are very sticky. And I take a second to explain it to you, because all of us who are engaged in this conversation, who are engaged in this learning journey, are putting the time and the effort in to understand what GDPR means when a UK military member is on a US network, and do those rights apply? Do we have to apply those same data standards? Like, we're doing that. That is a lot of brain power. As you pivot and you look up and you talk to your senior leaders, right? I certainly do that a lot here at Microsoft. You're going to need to start explaining from a place of advocacy and risk. So I like to break it down into those 2 parts, right? The advocacy is do the right thing. Everybody here who's at this event is focused on doing the right thing and wants to do the right thing. And I would encourage all of you, having lived through many of these tough conversations, both as a senior executive in the Defense Department and now an official at Microsoft, starting from a place of grounded truth that this is the right thing to do to protect operational security, to protect soldiers, sailors, airmen, and our wonderful Space Force members, right? Starting from that place is always a good starting point, and it grounds it, right? If you start with, we should protect the data in the following fashion, using the following technical capabilities, because it's the right thing to do for operational security, I believe that that resonates with more senior leaders than we give it credit to. We can often lose senior leaders when we get into the how many pennies does it cost to store this log data or that data? How many pennies does it cost to store this data in a sovereign cloud, respecting data sovereignty, or in a commercial cloud, right? And the difference is, and all of you know, because you pay those bills, can be 10, 20, 30% between them. And it's important to understand that there are costs to complying with CMMC. There are costs to complying with FedRAMP. There are costs to complying with the German government's approach to data protection, especially for the Bundeswehr and the other services there. That cost should always come second in your conversation with senior leaders. If you lay out the first one, which says, I don't want to take operational data, and in the context of this, let's talk a little bit about telemetry. I don't want to know when a soldier who is on deployment somewhere, some peacekeeping mission, when and where they log into their UK server. I don't want that to be publicly available on the internet so that an adversary can get it. Why? Because if we look at the internet right now, if I have that information, I can often get what is effectively targeting information. If we look at the war in Ukraine, you see this very specifically with cell phones. The news talks about interesting things like, oh, somebody had a cell phone on and then somebody got a response landed on their position because of poor operational security. When we think about operational security, we have to think about what are we doing that could be like a cell phone? What information are we providing that will allow you to get it allow you to get a pattern of life? What information are we storing and sharing that would allow you to determine potentially location? So if I know that Susie shows up at 9 a.m. every day, just like clockwork at this building, if there's some military need, right, from an opposing force, they can take action, right? We have to be thoughtful about these decisions. And when you talk to senior leaders, the answer is, well, it's telemetry, it's log data, it doesn't matter, because they're not spending the time in the weeds like all of us are, understanding operational constraints and understanding what's going on. So when you take an example of telemetry data and you say, hey, I got it, there's a terabyte of data collected every week. I looked at it. Here's why I think this is a risk. I start with operational security first. The next thing I go to, because I think it lands really well, because senior leaders want to do the right thing for reputational reasons and organizational values. And quite frankly, because every major cloud service provider that I have interacted with has a real sense of doing the right thing because it's the right thing. And I love that about the culture we live in. So I start with, let's talk about doing the right thing. And you do that by showing the data and showing how it could impact operational security. Okay, so let's say that that doesn't land well, or you've got that argued. Where do you go next? The next piece you go to is deep contractual understanding. Because as much as we might talk about CMMC and the annual assessment, how much that matters, the reality is, and I apologize for being very US specific here, the DD254 and your specified data elements that come in those contracts, quite frankly, are where you are going to get in trouble. You will not get caught on those in your CMMC audit. You will not. You will fail and breach a contract. You will put your entire company's work effort at risk if you don't respect and manage your contract, right? Again, the frameworks, FedRAMP, CMMC, they're there to provide an umbrella of coverage. But frontline commitments, frontline dedication to what you have to do for the mission, that is explicitly called out in your contracts. Know your contracts. Have a good lawyer on your team who has broad awareness. Work to establish that data dictionary and understanding. So again, we hit number one with leaders, which is do the right thing. And here's why the data says the operational security could be impacted. Number two says do the right thing because we committed to it in a contract, right? If the grounding is there. And then number three is always be a better security professional, right? Underlying everything we're doing, everything we do with data management, data handling, data governance is about being a better security professional. We do not implement CMMC. We do not implement FedRAMP. We do not implement any of the standards, because we have to. We implement those control frameworks to validate the quality security work and approaches we've taken from day one and the foundational approach to good security, right? A CMMC assessment of the 800-171 controls, having led Microsoft through it, I loved the journey, had a great 3PAO, wasn't hard. Why wasn't it hard? Because we do good security work every day. It's why we got a perfect score. The CMMC team came in, the Defense Contract Management Agency came in and validated the work that we're doing every day. You do not do work to pass CMMC. You do good quality work to meet your contractual commitments, to do all your other things. But CMMC and these other frameworks are meant to be an assessment of, is your security work effective? Are you doing the day in, day out? So if you're talking to your senior leadership team and you need to make an argument and you need to convince them to care about CMMC, you need to convince them to care about operational security, I always go back to those foundational approaches, right? 1, 2, 3, land a simple story, and you can leave pretty cleanly, because the senior leader who doesn't care about operational security and just cares about the bottom line understands two, which is the critical risk of contractual abrogation, like the removal or canceling of your contract, which has a negative impact on everybody's bottom line, or the ability to compete for future work. One of my counterpart companies in Germany just recently got a large fine because of some bad behavior on item 2, right? They didn't do some of the things in item 2. And then for the folks where 1 and 2 don't work, What does work is everybody works at a company that they care about. Everybody works at a company they believe in. Or if you don't, like, send me a note. Let's come work at Microsoft. I love this place. Who cares about the mission? And security is foundational to all of us right now, right? The cybersecurity context is one of ongoing, never-ending conflict and challenges. It is the hardest, most invigorating work experience you could have. And all of us care about basics with security. Now, my 1, 2, 3 method to talk to senior leaders has given me lots of success, certainly some failures. It worked in the Department of Defense. It works here. I think I'm going to take it away and I'm going to offer you option B. Show up as a compliance person. We should do this because the rules say, and they're going to check this. We should update this document because they say we have to do this. Think about how compelling the argument is to you when you speak from a place of operational mission impact. Always start there. When you speak to actual legal commitments to a customer, when you speak to your foundational commitment to security versus, hey, we need to do all new documentation in this format because. Now, CMMC and FedRAMP and all the other frameworks often provide paper drills. The Air Force has a great term for this called QEEP, which is needless administrative responsibilities. I think it's really important that we identify those and we work to share those back with the regulator, because if we go back to that big web of, hey, I'm not just the United States, I'm a multinational company. How do I deal with all these intersecting pieces? We need to be, we industry need to be effectively and actively communicating back to government where policy can be better, using data where possible, identifying and demonstrating places where, quite frankly, their assessment process doesn't work. And what do I mean by that? I mean, hey, I know there's a security gap, but you don't look behind that door, and I'm not going to point it out to you. Like, a compliance mindset is, hey, they didn't look in the door, we won, woohoo, right? A security mindset is, hey, like, we all have this risk in our HVAC system for SCADA systems, right? HVAC SCADA systems that run on non-IP based security are a massive risk to everyone. How are we approaching this problem? How are we addressing it? Well, hey, CMMC doesn't look at stuff like that. CMMC doesn't care that if you turn off the air conditioning to a data center, you could down the data center. But a security professional does. And we need to be having these conversations with our regulators with the classic conversation of somebody who is training a tiger, right? It's probably going to bite you at some point, but doing the right thing over time is a better choice. So with that, I'll focus on, when you're talking to your senior leaders, help them understand the context, but recognize in your head they never will. When you're talking to your senior leaders, go back and make sure that every one of your conversations, your presentations, focuses on 1, 2, and 3. And I would ask all of us to take a step back, and anytime we want to say, well, you have to because, go back to 1, 2, 3 and try to make a better influential argument. Try to explain to people why this matters and what we can do to make it successful. Thank you, everybody, for all the time today. I tried to keep it brief. I think some of you have follow-up questions. There should be a pop-up on the right. I look forward to getting a chance to talk with some of you, and I hope this was helpful. Good luck, and remember, security first and always, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, John, for sharing why CMMC compliance matters to your senior leaders. Microsoft is continuously evolving its technology stack and partnerships to best meet the regulatory demands of CMMC. Partnering with Microsoft to enhance audit-ready solutions to our clients, CyberSheath recognizes Microsoft's expertise and advancement of future-proofing technologies. CyberSheath is a trusted member of Microsoft's Intelligence Security Association, a Microsoft Cloud Solutions provider, and a Microsoft Premier Support partner. CyberSheath is also one of a select few trusted resellers for Microsoft GCC High and Office 365 GCC licensing. Please email us any GCC or GCC High specific questions you may have regarding your organization.